I was gonna say, are you still on the StreamYard plan that
It's
doesn't include logos?
free now, so
Oh,
it's going to be watermarked up in the top, unfortunately. But I think it works more or less the same, and I'm just editing in like a third party video editor to add the intro and outro.
nice.
But yeah, I'm not
That's
very
what's
good at it. I'm no John Bendfeldt, no
up.
JB.
Ever since we talked, I haven't seen you post one of those weird looking like pictures on Instagram that didn't fit
I,
anymore.
I've been trying. I've been really, really trying. I've been really trying. But let's start the show. I'm gonna sound off. Welcome back to World's Strongest Opinions, episode 69. Here with Tyler Perdue of Pro Strongman League and my brother from another mother, co-host and co-creator of WSO, John the Butcher. Bendfeldt, how are you, man?
I'm all right. How are you?
Good, man. I had to throw it down really thick today because it is episode 69. You're back
Hmm.
with us, John. After a hiatus,
Yeah,
it's a good day, man.
yeah. I figured I'd stop in. I was like, I'm pretty much not on the internet at all these days as far as social media goes.
That's
So
crazy.
my updates are like Darren, Tyler, and Cam. That's like who texts me these days. And then friends locally.
Well, people keep asking about you, man.
Absolutely.
Everybody's want to know that you're doing well, and I tell everybody that you're doing great, and you're just taking
Yeah.
a good, healthy break, man. And
Uh,
Yeah, it's
uh,
been nice. It's been like 6 months of like not doing social media really. So that's been nice to like logged out of all the Instagram accounts, deleted my
yeah,
personal one. Like it's
became a
been
tattoo
nice.
artist. Nobody even knows.
The tattooing has been the one on my thigh is still I touched it up today and it's a lot.
Dude, that's
It's
dangerous if you can do it
it's
yourself. Oh, that's dangerous.
oh yeah, because it's hard not to just like wake up and be like, I have
Besides,
an
yeah, that's what I
idea.
mean by dangerous, not like health dangerous. It's just like every day I'd be like, oh yeah, there's a little mark right there. I need to like
hold up a
touch up.
second. Hold a second. I did I miss something? You're like doing your own tattoo?
Oh yeah, so I got a tattoo machine at the end of 2023 that I've just been sparingly using. I got a new machine that the learning curve is steep. So I was testing that one out. I have like rows on my thigh that I've been working on. That's maybe it's a lot bigger than I expected because I had like a stencil printer that I wanted to test out and I didn't like size it and it just like printed out on a whole like 9 by 11 piece of paper. So I was like, I guess I'm gonna go with a 9 inch tattoo on my thigh to start out with.
Dude, that's amazing. That's awesome, dude.
Yeah.
I don't think a lot of people could do that. Like I do. When I traveled for Strongman, especially internationally, I would take my own IV bags and do my own IVs. And
Yeah.
people are like, "You're nuts, man." I'm like, "Yeah, but it's really not that hard. But you got to have like a little bit of, I don't know, personal comfort and courage, maybe, to do a freaking whole tattoo on your leg."
Yeah. I don't know if it shows up, but yeah,
Oh yeah,
it's
dang,
a
dude.
lot. Like it's a whole
The other
it's yeah, I spent like 7 hours shading. I don't know if it comes through well. But
Yeah,
yeah,
no, it should.
shading is so painful on yourself. That's like it's intense, especially with the new machine I got. It's like it has a lot more variability because my first one I got was a $60 little pin off of Amazon, and now I have one that's like cordless, and it's nice, but the cordless one's even more convenient because I don't have to set up the wires
oh
and like
no
hook
way.
everything up, so I can just like wrap it up because I do use like I have do all the health stuff. Like I wear the gloves, sanitize everything. Then I have like uh, mats and stuff that I put down and saran wrap everything, so it's like sterile.
Yeah, I mean,
It's a
that's smart. That's
yeah,
smart.
yeah.
Well,
It's a
hey, we're
lot.
here to talk today with Tyler Perdue. Not to cut you out, John. Dude,
Yeah,
it's awesome having you back. We're here to talk with Tyler about the economics of strongman.
yeah.
Why don't you kick us off, man? I mean, I'll say, like, a lot of people don't know. I've actually studied finance and economics in college. Like, this is topic that is near and dear to my heart.
Yeah. Yeah, it's also one that I feel like people don't either think about, know about, or talk about, or some combination of all three. But yeah, there's the economics of, and to be clear, it's like the economics of competing in shows and running shows and that, not like the broader economics of like the Strongman world. Um,
The
I do not.
microeconomics.
Yeah, there we go. Yeah, I was like, I do not have the knowledge to talk about the big stuff, man. But it's, I mean, Darren, you've competed all over the world, so you have a really good idea of like what that looks like on just on all different levels, from driving down the road from your house to flying literally halfway across the world to compete in a place that you know nothing about or not much, and just all that comes along with that, right? All the unexpected costs and like the stuff that you didn't plan on, and
Yeah.
um, currency conversion. That's from the athlete side, is like, certain things to think about and be considerate of and just know what goes into it. And then the other side is the shows. Like, you see people daily commenting about how shows should be ran, or how they would do it, or how that was a waste of money, or whatever the case might be. And there's about, I don't know, man, a handful of people that are probably actually super qualified to talk about that, like from a promoter standpoint. And what that looks like. And I love this topic too. And I'm kind of like, where do we want to start? We want to start with like the athlete competing side, or do we want to start with the promotion side, and what that
Let's
looks like?
start. Let's start with the athlete, man. I mean, because I think that's probably a little easier topic, and something that the athletes, I mean, our broader audience is going to be far more familiar with,
Right. For sure.
and can relate with, right? And I agree. Like, I mean, travel. I mean, it's a huge expense. I don't think. I don't know where it's at today, but when I was the most competitive, I don't think I could do a show anywhere, even in the United States, when it came to travel expenses, right? Flights, lodging, ground transportation, the food that you're going to buy while you're away, entry fees, all that. I don't think I could do one for less than like 1,500. Usually $2,000 was the average, and that was just in the United States.
Yeah.
Then you start traveling overseas, and yeah, I mean, there's greater risk. I've had flights canceled, halfway. I spent 24 hours in Iceland once, and ended up getting to my hotel way later, like a day later, and really late to even start my cut. And so there's like all these variables that come into play, and yeah, it gets really, really freaking expensive really fast.
Absolutely.
And then the further away you are, right, when you're going across the world, typically you're going to stay longer because you have to have an acclimation period to the time change. And then there's some of these shows that are 2-3 days long, which, I mean, you're just kind of forced to spend more money as an athlete to stay for, even if
Yeah.
you don't know you're going to make it to the last day. You're still going to spend the money just in case.
Yeah. Or because you want to watch at the very least, or you're coaching somebody, or just whatever the case might be. I know very few people who have ever booked a like a whole trip knowing that they're not gonna, like, you know what I mean? Like, not for the whole show.
Sure.
Not knocking the people that do that. I'm just saying I know very few people that ever.
I've never seen anybody do that.
So I've known a couple people that said they have, and I'm just like,
Really?
yeah. I mean, at that point, it's like, might as well stay the extra day, like watch,
More
hang
power
out.
to you, but why did you go if you were sure that you were gonna?
Yeah, I've seen people like fly out the same day as shows end and stuff too. I was like, hey, I respect it, like how it is. But yeah, like that's one thing that people, it's hard, it's harder to think about, right? Is like, because you think a show is just a show. It's like, yeah, but how long is it? Where is it? Because the other thing is like, yeah, it's a couple of days, but where is it? Because there's a huge difference in lodging, flights, transportation, like depending on where you're at. Like you go to like somewhere like New York City. I don't know that Strongman shows there, but like you go like New York City, for example. Well, it's easy to get there, but it's
Sure.
expensive as all hell to stay there.
Yep.
Like or opposite, you go to the middle of nowhere. It's pretty expensive probably to get there, but then it's probably cheap once you're there. And
Right.
just knowing where you're going and kind of planning. There's a few people I've talked to that are really good at the planning aspect. Actually, CJ Kraus is really good at planning the trips and finding like the best flight deals and all sorts of stuff like that. And that's okay, and that's where you have to start, right? Is like, well, what's my entry fee? What are the fees associated with just doing the show? not getting there, not eating, nothing like that, just doing the show, right? How much does it cost? Is there an entry fee? Is there a federation fee? More recently, we got coaches fees. And then are there extra like processing fees on top of that, right? When we start to use third party companies to like, or we have to, right? Like third party companies to take an order for like an entry to a venue or something like that. Like, yeah, Ticketmaster's going to charge you, and people don't realize that until they're in the middle of it. It's like, dang, that's a lot of extra. It's just a lot of extra cost. And I've been looking around. I think Darren, I was talking to you, man. My first show I did, I think like $40 on an early bird.
Yeah.
If I'm not mistaken, it was like one of Dan Caraway's first shows in West Virginia. Like
That used to be the norm. $40
40
for an entry fee.
Entry fee, whatever. Maybe like 55, 60 for like when you're not early bird. And then I couldn't. I remember my first USS fee was $20, and it just lasted you till the end of the year. I don't remember my first Strongman Corp fee. I found my Strongman Corp membership card, my first one, from it was actually NAS. It wasn't even Strongman Corp.
Yep.
Membership card. And I was like, dang, I don't even know what this thing cost me back in the day. But
I remember NAS being more expensive than USS. Even earlier, when USS started, their membership fees were already much lower than I remember SC ever being.
Yeah, I think they were. And the difference in this, I haven't competed in either in quite a while, but I think USS it lasted till the end of the year, no matter when you got it. And then the NAS one was like a 12-month rolling thing.
Yep.
I still think if you did the math and you bought 2 USS ones, I think it still worked out to be slightly less.
Sure.
But I do remember there being like that difference because I had both of them and I had to remember
Yeah, I think you're right. It's been a while for me too, so yeah, I don't.
Yeah, because
I'm an old boomer, so I don't trust my memory.
Just talking about outdated numbers here. I'm sure a quick like search or a text to someone could figure out real quick what they are now. But regardless,
it's like
if you're going to
$90 for a Strongman core.
So is that what it is now?
Like $90 for Strongman core, and of course the calendar year thing about USS did throw me off because one of the first shows I ever did was in November, and I bought the membership, and then I was like, oh, this is only good till the end of December. I was like, huh. No,
but it was only $20.
No nothing.
It was probably only $20.
I think this was it had gone up to 30. Just like Venmo, fill out your little card.
Because I remember the first time I talked to like Nebraska's Strongest Man like 2015 or something obnoxious, like long time ago, and we were just talking about like I was like, hey, yeah, I was like in the middle of the year and I didn't have my USS card at that time, and I was like, dang, it's only gonna last half the year, and he was like, yeah, but all you gotta do is just buy another one and it's still pretty cheap, and I was like, okay, that's fine. Yeah, it's like just knowing the cost, like because little things add up really fast. Like your entry fees now, I see about like $100 for a local show, and then I on up to mid to high 200s for the bigger shows.
Yeah,
and then like I said, you have looks like there's some coaches fees becoming. I don't think it's fair to say it's becoming standard yet because it hasn't been a thing for like a year, but it seems like it's catching steam. Or like picking up steam.
Is it picking up steam in other organizations though?
I know that I saw it at SC Nationals was the first place I saw it personally. By personally, I just mean I wasn't there, but I saw it.
Okay.
I put OSG, and then right down the road from you, Olympic City. I think theirs is like $15, if I'm not mistaken. I saw like a nice little lanyard thing. I want to say it was like $15. Don't quote me on that, but it is on their page.
That's crazy sauce at a local show. Like to me. I mean, we've had those guys on the show and nothing against them, but personally, but charging a coach's fee for a local show is, I don't know. I have very strong opinions on that, actually.
I have strong
is this the right venue to have strong opinions?
Because I have strong opinions from the promoter side and the athlete side and the coaches side. But and you just kind of boil down. You're like, doing the show is going to cost so much money before you factor in anything else, right? And then the next thing is how long are you staying somewhere? Like you mentioned earlier, Darren, it's like, well, how long is the show is going to essentially dictate how long you stay. And a one-day show, you could come in the day before. Let's just pretend everyone's weighing in for the point of this. So you get there a day before, weigh in, compete, and assume you leave the next day. It's like 3 days. Probably pretty standard for most people, unless they turn it into like a trip. 2 day show, you're probably going to get there. It's still the day before. So now it's like 4 days, a 3 day show, 5 days. But really, once you get to like a 3 day show domestically, you're probably staying a little bit longer for the most part, but it was at minimum 5 days.
Absolutely.
And depending on where you're at, the hotels, there's it's Airbnb wasn't really a big thing when I started competing. It was just like, hey, where's a hotel? But like now you got Airbnb, you got Verbo. Obviously, most places can kind of direct you towards a hotel, whether you have a deal or not. Whatever that might be. But I find it very hard to. I'm saying traveling with one of your friends or something. Like you're not traveling with a big group, getting a huge house and all that stuff. Which stressed me the heck out competing like that. But I find it hard to find anything that's less than like 150 bucks a day, like no matter where you're at. And I've been some places that it's 300 is the minimum. You get to an expo that's in the middle of nowhere really, and there's only like 2 hotels, and the hotels are like, hey, everyone's coming, so we're going to charge a ton because we're going to sell out. And then you start to get to your number.
Or if you skimp, man, sorry to interject, but we did this. I did this recently at a Highland Games show at Estes Park. And there was a couple of pros that stayed in the same hotel because they were like, oh, it's super cheap. And it's just down the hill, right? Down the mountain, like 40-minute drive. Man, we got what we paid for. It was terrible. Like the beds were like, dude, my ass sank to the floor in the middle of bed. I slept like shit. And so that's like an aspect of like that selection too. Like if you have serious aspirations at the show that you're going to, like you need to be cognizant of what you're actually buying too. Because you can get by doing things cheap. You're probably going to pay a different price for it, right? In performance, when you don't sleep well, you're not recovering, your back hurts, yada yada yada.
Yeah, you stress. Your wife and kids are there, not happy because the place isn't nice. All sorts of additional things that,
man,
if at all possible, you can avoid. And yeah, you just got to decide like what kind of experience are you trying to have. The amount of people that I've talked to, like, man, I booked like a place that doesn't have a bathtub, and I'm supposed to do baths. I'm like, well, how did you not?
How did you not plan? I mean, that's user error right there.
But it's just like the idea of like thinking through what you're doing and what it's going to include. Some people, they like to go shop, like grocery shopping and cook, so they get an Airbnb. Cool. How many times I've had Airbnbs cancel on me last second versus how many times a hotel has canceled on me last second?
I've never had an Airbnb cancel on me.
Yeah, I've had Airbnbs cancel for any not just for me, but I've also had them cancel for people I've booked things for.
I'm kidding.
And I'm talking like plane just landed, Airbnb's canceled. Like, all right, well, I guess we're gonna find something else now.
That's messed up. I would think there would be some sort of, I don't know, action that Airbnb would take for you or something. I mean, hopefully.
There might be.
I don't know what they can do, I guess, but
I mean, I didn't get charged for it, so I'm not the kind of person
talk
about it because I'm just immediately like, okay, well, all right,
what do you got to do now? Not much you can do about it, but fix the problem, I guess.
Yeah, it's like usually I try to find a hotel. The Arnold is a huge exception to that rule. Like Airbnbs are so much cheaper at the Arnold than any hotel within
Dude, Columbus is like one of the most expensive places to travel to as an athlete in the US.
Mm-hmm.
It's obscene.
Absolutely. There's nothing cheap about it. Yeah. And again, you get this flip experience. You get to go to the Arnold. So if you like that, then okay. Yeah. But yeah, it's like you very quickly realize like how many thousands of dollars goes into a show that, again, that you're not just like waking up out of your own bed, rolling over and driving 10 minutes to the local gym.
Right. I mean, if you're really, really lucky and you live in Columbus, Ohio, yeah, maybe.
There's a few of them.
There's a few of them.
Yeah, and like, dude, I've stayed like 30 minutes outside from the Arnold before, but that it brings up another point. Is like, all right, well, your lodging is one thing, but then it's like, what are all these random costs that you're going to incur? For example, the Arnold, nobody parks for free there. Right? It's like no athlete parks for free there that I understand. So it's like either you get a hotel that you can just kind of walk over in walking distance. It's going to be $300 a night or more, most likely. Mm-hmm. Even people that like book, right after the Arnold's over for next year, it's pretty expensive. Or there's parking there, and I've gotten really lucky a few times and parked on the street. been paid like $7, but like the lots are $20-$30 a day. I don't know. I don't one of the garages. I've never parked in one. But it's like, all right, well, if I'm going to be here for 3 days, all of a sudden $20-$30 a day turns into $60-$90.
Yeah.
That's just like just a park that you didn't even plan for. So it's like, dang, that sucks. And that's happened other places too. Basically, if you're going to anything in an arena of sorts,
Mhm.
it's probably
Yeah.
parking. Hey, man, we run we show at Virginia Beach. Like, there's a parking fee. I tell people, like, hey, like you can park on the street, you can park in the garages. Thankfully, they're not that expensive, but this is what you should plan on or we have like 4 hotels that you can stay at that are all walking distance and they have parking.
Yeah.
But one of the 2 things you're going to want to plan on.
Yeah, man.
And then, the other like food. People can do it really smart, right? You can go grocery shopping and you either cook or don't, or what you have whatever your cooking situation is. I do think was Andrew Clayton's probably one of the smartest traveling strongman I've ever discussed any of this with ever. But like, how much is your food going to cost? Like, you're competing, right? So you want to eat good food. You're probably going to eat a lot. You probably got to refeed after your weigh in. My grocery shopping trips for this stuff easily around $150. Like, and then I would be like, where did they even get to spend it all? And so
Man,
then like,
I actually I got really lucky the first clash and Hilton Head Island. I knew a guy here that was driving out because he paid for a vendor tent,
yeah,
and I threw a cooler of pre-made meals in his.
dude.
But
Absolutely.
you want to know what really sucked though? Was when we got there was no freaking microwave in the hotel room.
The beach house has no microwaves. There's one in the lobby.
Yeah, but there was one in the lobby, and so like everybody had to go that. Like there was multiple people that did the similar, and so like we're all standing in line, like wait, he's a freaking microwave.
I remember that. That's the show you and me technically first officially met, Darren.
It's true. It's true. And I got you and JD like completely mixed up because you guys look so much alike.
Man,
Or TJ. I said JD. TJ.
Yeah,
Yeah.
don't do that to TJ. Don't do that to TJ.
Well, it's only like fair. I mean, or it's right on par for me to like. I already fucked you guys up once. Do it again. Do it again.
Yeah. And actually, that not like I was just thinking about John for a second. I was like, another cost is like, who's coming with you, right? Like, who else is coming? And what cost does that incur? Like, family, friends, kids, coach, other than coach's pass. That like it's like all of a sudden, like and John, like you've been there, you pay a spectator fee. You have to eat, obviously. You obviously need a place to stay. Like all and it just adds on. And
Yeah, because it is
probably
like a mini
John probably wants to
vacation.
do something other than compete. If John's not competing, he probably wants to go do something, whether it's like a museum, whether it's like a Disney World, wherever you're at, whatever it is. And it's like, cool, John wants to do that. Well, how much do we have to pay for that now? Right? Like it's fun. It's a trip. It's a vacation. Like most people probably got to take some time off work, whether a Friday or a Monday or something. It's like, cool. Well, how much does that cost? Right? Because it's like paid time off. Sure. Some people, if you take time off and you're in sales, for example, you're really making money that day. So it's like the opportunity cost, if you will. It's like all these things I always considered, and I like try to help people work through because like, oh well, and then I just talked about this a little bit, but it's like finding good deals on travel because some people just look at a flight one time, like, dang, flights are that cost. Just because they don't have the experience, right? To be like, oh, well, if you book a flight on this day or at this time, or you use like I've never done it, but use like a VPN or just all sorts of stuff. Have someone in another area book a flight for you that's cheaper with your card, all sorts of stuff.
There's sometimes where you're stuck with flight costs though too. I mean, and talking about Clash, the second year of Clash, man. In 22, it was to leave Sunday that year was like $1,200, man. Not even kidding. and that was it because there was one flight, right? You get one choice out of Hilton Head Island.
Oh yeah, because the whole Denver crew flew out. Like, yeah, I remember that. They like walked to the airport.
So I actually ended up staying 2 days longer for no reason, just to save money. I stayed 2 days longer until Tuesday, paying for my Airbnb, and I still saved like $800.
That's wild.
Yeah.
Like,
And so I just chilled out. I was like, well, I guess I'm just taking. Everybody left, and I just went and hung out on the beach for 2 days, man.
yeah, once everyone's gone, there's not a lot you want. There's not a lot to do in Hilton Head.
There's nothing to do there, and there's no Uber or Lyft service to get you anywhere, so you're on foot. And like,
I blocked that out of my mind, but yes,
oh
like,
yeah,
shares is not.
I'm talking about unforeseen costs, man. That last year too, a buddy of mine came and hung out. He had to leave Sunday, but he had to pay like some random like guy we ended up with his card or something.
Mhm, yeah.
And he did like special like taxi stuff, but it was like he paid like $150 to get a ride to the airport, man.
Because it was either that or walk, and they know that.
Or walking.
Which
'Cause there's no Lyft or Uber at Hilton Island. Who knew?
Yeah, or it's either that or you book a flight that's in an airport an hour away,
Yep.
which also happens.
Sure.
You know, and it's just like, well, that just is what it is. Because it's one of those places where it's like there's not a lot going on, and it's hard to get to. Even driving, it's not the easiest thing to get to because
Right.
it's out there. Yeah, unforeseen costs like that, like you just don't know. Or like if you don't know the Denver airport's an hour away from anything in Denver. Like,
Yep. It's out in
first
the
time I
middle of
flew into Denver, yeah, I was like,
nowhere.
oh, my Lyft is $90. Like what?
What?
Yeah.
What?
To get
No.
an Uber, taxi, or Lyft, something. I remember I was visiting my sister when she moved out there. It was
Man,
like to like Denver proper or whatever. It was like $90 after I tipped the guy.
that's crazy.
And no, I didn't tip the guy $50.
That's
Yeah.
probably gotten more expensive because I used to ride Uber or Lyft to the airport all the time, and it was like used to be like $30 from my house, which is like 30 minutes away. Which is, I mean, where you held the show here, about the same distance. So that's crazy.
Yeah. Yeah, I say, well, my sister lived in
Castle Rock,
somewhere.
right? Colorado Springs.
Castle Rock. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember you telling me.
Yeah. I was saying, well,
I got you,
yeah,
man. I got you. I remember where your sister lives.
Just stuff like that.
Why do I know where your sister lives?
But she moved. Yeah, well, I think he actually wound up giving me a ride one of those times. But yeah, no, yeah, Castle Rock, because somebody else lived there too that you knew, but I forget. Yeah, it's like the costs add up so much, and it's like people just don't realize it. And then the small portion of sport that like winds up, I always say caring about prize money, right? Like if you're in contention to win it or it means something to you, like none of us are retiring on weight class strongman winnings, but it's kind of like people are like, oh well, there's this much prize money. It's like, well, what's the cost and the return, right? Let's just say you win, or you get second, or you get third, or fourth or fifth. Some places pay out, down the ladder, which is awesome. But it's like, cool. Like, so what's your return if you're basing your participation on prize money, right? Which most people probably should not. But there are people that very much, I get it. It's like, cool. What's your return, right? It's like, well, if I get an extra $500, well, how much did it cost you to get the extra $500 if you had to stay an extra day or two and feed yourself, do whatever it is, Lyft, Ubers, taxis, hotel, time off work, whatever? How did it cost? It probably cost you more than $500.
That brought my $3,000 in the red to $2,500 in the red.
Yeah,
I mean, look, man. I mean, the reality at the end of the day, though, like here's the thing: as an athlete, as a strongman athlete, probably 99.99% of strongman athletes are going to never get out of the red on the costs of being an athlete.
Probably not. And that's only we're talking competition costs. We're not talking any of the other year-round costs of competing.
Well, yeah, I'm thinking bigger picture because like I did the math one time and it was roughly averaged of what my average spend was year over year. And the amount of money that I spend on strongman is stupid. It hurts my soul.
It's a hobby at the end of the day that you put money into, just like anything else.
It is.
I have a hobby behind me that I put money into that, I'll never see a return on it. Right. Unless Legos do something nuts, I'm never going to see a return on the finances of my hobby of Legos. Elvis can be quote John.
But on the
too.
but you're right, on the micro scale, right? Show to show, there are possibilities, potential, right? It's probably improbable, but possible that you could break even or make a little bit of money on
Sure.
a show. Totally
Yeah,
possible.
absolutely. There's shows now. I mean, this didn't exist when Darren used to, or I started. Like, there's shows now that if you win, you can, you can probably, especially if it's domestic to you, you can probably bank on taking some money home after your
Right.
costs, unless you just are ridiculous with it.
Yeah.
You know, because most shows that are paying out, winning gets you at least like $3,000.
Yep.
Somewhere along those lines. So after you figure, you know, you pay a little bit of taxes on that or whatever, you could probably, you could probably make the trip work and have it all paid for or whatever.
Let's stop on taxes just for a second. Because a
Taxes.
lot of athletes, I don't think, are aware, and it's good to know that as an athlete, you don't need to be incorporated. You don't have to have a business structure. You don't have to do anything. As an athlete, you can write off your competition expenses as long as you are competing for money for up to 3 years. So after the 3-year mark, the IRS is going to say, well, you're not making any money. We're not going to continue doing this. But you can write off all of your expenses as an athlete. I mean, again, as long as you're competing for money, which, I mean, most high level shows you are, that's a legit claim. So, I mean, all of your expenses throughout the year, all of your equipment cost, your personal protective gear, your supplements, travel expenses, all that stuff can be written off. If you keep track of that stuff, write that stuff off. You shouldn't be paying. So my big picture here, I mean, unless you're only doing one show and making some money out of it, unlikely for most of us, you shouldn't be paying any taxes on anything. You should be, writing off losses.
It's a good point. I'd be curious, like the nuances state to state and what that looks like. Because obviously you're someone who's experienced with it.
What's federal? So,
oh,
yeah,
I have an accountant. that's where I go with it.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's a good point. Like the write-offs, you said you don't have to be incorporated or anything like that. Just you going to a show that offers prize money, basically. That's all that really requires. Interesting. Yeah, because the IRS probably doesn't care if you got 15th. Like at that point, it's probably like a gambling loss. At that point to them, it's probably no different.
Yeah, so I don't think you can write off gambling losses. I don't know that.
I don't gamble, but I've always heard people say you can write off lottery tickets when you lose. Never bought a lottery ticket in my life. Don't plan on it.
Possible.
I've just kind of heard it in the ether, if you will.
Yeah. But anyway, definitely as an athlete, people can be writing off their expenses for at least 3 years. Like you get a solid 3 years of losing money, and you can write that off. Then the IRS is just like, nah, we're going to cut you off if you're not making money. Meh. But
interesting. So 3 years is kind of like 3 years in a row, and then that's it.
That's it.
Huh. Yeah, I thought you meant.
I mean, I didn't do it any longer. I don't know if you could get away with it, but that was working with my accountant. He told me 3 years. So, and we wrote it off. We wrote it off for 3 years. So,
I like your.
It's been a while. So I think everything is copacetic.
Yeah.
They haven't audited me yet.
Get an accountant like Darren. Yeah, to do that. That's actually really cool. That's like a gem that I didn't even know about. That that people can do to help offset the cost. Because even if it's a hobby, it's still a hobbies cost things. Again, like I have a hobby in my background.
But I mean, sorry, I'm like whenever I think of a hobby, like I posted something about this on my Facebook today. Like my brain, a hobby is something that like I'm a fly fisherman, and I have a mid-range like rod and reel, and I've got some like cheap ass waders and an okay selection of flies and a net. I go out once in a while. Like I'm a hobbyist, right? The guy that shows up head to toe in Sims, which is the most expensive gear you can buy, the 3,000 like multiple 3,000 rods with $1,000 reels and quadruplets of every single fly organized like by by color, size, and season, right? This guy is not a hobbyist. He's not making any money off of it either, right? But this
Right.
guy's out, he's got something to prove, right? He's serious. And like to me, it's like, yeah, I mean, we've talked about this many times in the past. Like, we can call ourselves pro strongman because we want to show, or we are competing for money, but true professional is making a living, right, off of your profession.
Right.
So there's kind of like this blurry sort of line between hobby and pro, and what really qualifies that. And I don't know. I always kind of feel like a hobbyist isn't really very serious, right?
Right.
I go buy a model plane once in a while and some cheap glue and put it together, right? I don't have like a whole entire space in like a fancy airbrush and every paint imaginable, right? Like,
Yeah.
I'm not making any
Right.
money off that either, but
Not John with
serious.
good.
hobby.
Yeah, no, I think there's the other aspect where it's like if you are competing but not making money, but your presence in the sport, it drives something else for you, whether it be clothing, coaching, gym, training, whatever,
Right.
then it's also not really a hobby anymore because there's an objective. Just I've talked to some guys. I talked to a guy not too long ago. He's like, every time I compete, I get a client or two. And if that client or two pays you $150 or $200 a month for the next 2 years, then absolutely that competing paid you that money.
Yeah.
And so for the people who can and want to, Darren, I know you've started coaching, like, there's no chance your coaching would be you wouldn't have the same pedigree to start with if you didn't compete. Right.
I mean, I like to believe that, but I mean, there's guys that do one show and suddenly are coaching like 10 more novices to go into novice and stay in novice forever. But
Dude,
yeah,
I tell
I
you,
mean,
the problem
yeah,
is-
point taken. Sorry, world's strongest opinions.
yeah,
Gotta
dude, I mean,
freaking
hey,
punch down a little bit once in a while.
yeah, that's why I say there. I've been in strength and conditioning coaching for a very long time, and I've always said that it is not near regulated enough in like the general like civilian world, right? Like it's regulated. You cannot go become a strength coach at any level at a college football team, for example. You can't just do that, right? That's not how that works. But like, you want to go to Liberty and be a strength coach. Like there's a process for that. There's things you have to do. And if you don't do those things, there is no chance you can do that. It's not like a who you know at that point.
Right.
But if you just want to coach strongman, then just put it in your Instagram profile. And, hey, I'm a coach. Those people do tend
I mean,
to
good for what, just good for those guys for going out and like doing something that they want to do. That takes courage and it's hard, but
it does. And hey, someone wants to do it. Hey, you know what? Maybe that's just they just coach people that just want someone to tell them good job because there are those people out there that exist. But like the point is like, you can drive. It's like your vehicle to drive actual like income somewhere else. That I've seen tons of people do it. I've also known some of the best athletes to be some of the worst coaches I've ever seen. Just imaginable.
Being a good athlete does not make you a good coach.
No, it doesn't. It
doesn't feel like it is though.
People do.
It's like people who claim like somehow go from being like strength coaches to like life coaches, and it's like you're just a strongman competitor. You can do some kind of like life coaching, but I feel like sometimes people have this like very intensive like because there is very much this like coaching kind of like as we joke like the strongman industrial complex. There is this new thing of like people just like trying to monetize like every aspect of things. Like it's crazy when even like here locally you have like coaches charging like $300 a month for like programming and like nutrition and everything. Like my first strongman coach Mike, who knew Darren and everything, like he would do that, and then it turns out we're all doing the exact same program, and the meal prep or like nutrition coaching was just here's good meals to eat and then keep track of things in MyFitnessPal. It's like you can do that on your own. Like the average person can look up like here's good things to eat. Like there's a whole thing. So I think sometimes there can be like it's interesting because I feel like sometimes I see people who would be great coaches and athletes who just aren't putting themselves out there as much. And then there are some people who just like like Darren was saying, literally the first time you do nationals or whatever, like instantly you're a coach, regardless of where you ended up on the nationals thing, because it's also you realize you can get to nationals just by qualifying as a novice. Like that's not that's not necessarily a strength level like measurement if you go or like people who it's like one show that like you can go even if there's like no cap because I know at least strongman core you have to have like at least 5 people in your class to qualify for nationals or something, and then I think like uss like there's no cap on it, so you could sign up to be the 2 people in your weight class and you're both invited to nationals, or at least one of you is. And you're like,
That is no cap.
yeah, that's yeah, yeah.
The pun was dropped thickly on that.
Yeah, no,
I
No.
both stances on that. But
yeah,
both stances on that is like, well, is it the athlete's fault that the promoter didn't get enough people? And the other side is, as a promoter, do we really want people that just showed up going to the next step? You know, there's pros and cons to both.
yeah.
I
And it is
personally
hard.
often said the podium to the in-person qualifiers is going to go to the championship show, and I'm like, all right, cool, we're going to get people, and if we don't, I got to live up to that, right? I got to hold up to it, whatever it is, and then learn from my mistake and don't do it again if that's the case. I get both sides of it. I don't think there's a right or a wrong when you depend on how you phrase it. But coaching is a
Yeah.
thing. Most strongman people, whether they can find it on their own or not, pay for coaches, right? Like, and that's fine. I think it's always a good thing, no matter how smart you are or how accomplished you are, to have a coach of some sort, just to oversee what you're doing at the very least. You know, I've seen all sorts of stuff pop up recently, but it's like
Coaching, like everybody needs a coach or a mentor. Even coaches need coaches and
coaches
mentors.
need coaches, man. There's
I
very few
mean,
people I've met that are worse off with a coach than on their own.
I mean, coaches like, I want to get back to the topic of economics, but like coaching is like isn't just programming and diet advice and tracking, right? And it should be a learning experience. It should have value because I mean, look, you can go and ask AI to create you a program, like, and it can create you a pretty good program, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And the reality is that for like a lot of people, the same stimulus and the same exercises are going to have great utility. But what you get out of a coaches is a relationship, right? That accountability, somebody who's available to answer questions, that's going to teach and lead, and and have like empathy and understanding of how things are going and how we can adjust, and having that person that has got the experience and has had their feet on the ground and in these same exact scenarios as that you're in. That's the value of coaching, right?
Right.
It's not just in creating a program and saying do X number of reps at whatever RPE. It's the value of having somebody that can actually teach you. You should never, a coach should never, like, like the 2-year horizon with a coach to me is like, hey, that would be cool if somebody wants to pay me for 2 years, but my goal is going to be to teach them to take what I have to teach and go and do that on their own. Like, you shouldn't need me as a coach for 2 years, because if you
Right.
do, then I haven't done a very damn good
Right.
job of being your coach.
Yeah. But if you
Right.
want me 2 years, that's completely different.
Yeah, I mean, but that's like that's a conversation that I think that needs to be had with your coach too. And you shouldn't just assume as a coach that your athlete is just going to be there for 2 years. It's like, hey, if you're still with me in 2 years, like, we gotta have a conversation. Like, is this just because like you're comfortable? This is like where you want to be? Maybe maybe you need to give them a push and be like, go spread your wings, man. Like, there's a point, I think, for any athlete or client that you want them to go out on their own and show the world what we do, right?
Yeah. And I think we could probably talk about that for like the whole weekend
Yeah,
and all
absolutely.
the ins and outs of that. Something I'm actually very passionate about, that entire topic.
Yes. But let's get back to the economics, man. We've talked extensively about the athlete experience and the expense, and it is expensive, and there's a lot of variables depending on where you're going, how long you're going to stay. the unforeseeables, like that's a big deciding factor. I know for a lot of athletes, it was for me when choosing certain competitions that I was going to do. And the ones that were more days, to me, a lot of times I would skip. Like nothing against OSG or anything, but I qualified for OSG for like 5 freaking times.
Yeah.
I went once because to me, it didn't make a lot of sense to go and spend a crap ton of money for like a couple of events for 2 days and not really sure if I'm gonna make the third day, but still gonna pay for it. And I think at my most competitive, I would have made the top 10, but man, it's like a brutal amount of money for, and it used to be really long days. And I'm just like, as an athlete, I'm like, is this really worth it for me? And it wasn't. I went and chose to do shows like Clash, SEL Worlds, right?
Yeah.
Things that were like a better experience actually for the athlete, right? I got more bang for my buck. And still even my one experience at OSG, well, it was an amazing venue and production. I was just a speck on the wall. Like I didn't matter, right? That's how I felt, honestly. And it's not taking anything away from them. It's just it's a big production and so many people and like so long. You're kind of insignificant afterthought as an athlete there. Where you go to like PSL, right? SEL, where it's very class oriented, class specific, small, intimate. Like it's all about the athlete, and like that makes a huge, huge, huge difference. At least for me as an athlete, in me determining where I'm going to spend my money, because there isn't an ROI. there isn't much of an ROI really. I mean, hopefully that changes, and I know it is changing. When I was an athlete, there wasn't. So where I spent my money really depended on like where I was going to get the best athlete experience.
Yeah, and I think you hit the nail on the head with like what's important to you and what matters to you, right? Because OSG, every contest has its pros and cons, right? Everyone does, and
Absolutely.
I think OSG's great production,
It's amazing.
great indoor venues, like all sorts of shirts are dope, like fit well, like all sorts of stuff goes really, really well for them. And we can all say what we want, and even the people that are like super upset with OSG for whatever reason, is like there's one thing that it does that nothing else does is you bring, whether it's in a cool place, and I don't mean weather-wise, I mean place we want to go to or not, it brings most people together. So then you get that like, hey, I see these are friends from all over the world that I might or might not see very often. That it does that, right? But it's like, what's worth it to you, right? What do you value? And knowing what you're going to get, right? Darren, you value like that exclusivity, that personal touch and feel that you can't have with 400 people. So it's like, cool, that's where you want to go, and there's nothing wrong with that. But yeah, I mean, it's just like you said, the cost and all that, and what's worth it. Because if I'm going to go overseas, I mean, I just went to the Rogue Invitational. Obviously, I did not compete at that, but that was a whole trip to Scotland too. And we won't get into like what it did or did not cost me, and whatever. Like I was backstage, all that, but like I was trying to factor in if I paid for everything, and I was like, dang. As a fan, that's really expensive. And I was like, cool, if I was competing, right? If I was just coming here to do a show, would this have been worth it if I had to pay for everything? And the answer was yeah, because it was a cool place, right? It was a cool place to go. I got to do some stuff. Fun fact, Scotland Five Guys tastes different than American Five Guys. It's a thing.
It tastes better?
Better. It's just not as I love Five Guys, by the way, but it's not as heavy. It's not as greasy. Like I don't know. It's interesting, but like it's even in the US, like is it a place you want to go, and can you have a trip, right? Like, and John, you too, man. If you're going to go support an athlete, where do you want to go? I mean, I'm from West Virginia. Now some people that love going to West Virginia, right? Like they don't like big cities. They don't like things. Some people obviously hated it. That's no secret either. But some people don't want to go to the beach. Blows my mind. But like some people don't.
I know.
I was just talking to Melissa the other day. She's like, I don't really care about the beach. I'm like, what's wrong with you? But like there are people out there that
I didn't create this, man, to keep it hidden. I gotta
But
be
like
on the
that's
beach.
yeah, but like when you're spending your money, like it matters, right? Like that's also some, especially if you have like family and kids, especially like can they have a good time? Because nobody wants to lug their family somewhere that they just hate the whole time. And that's something some promoters I know do an excellent job at considering. Other promoters don't, and then some promoters are just kind of stuck with what they have,
Yeah.
right? Like local promoter that's like, hey man, I got my parking lot right here. We're gonna do this.
And-
All right, cool.
Right.
Power to you. And for all intents and purposes, OSG is kind of like, you got to have a pretty big place. You can't do it in the parking lot. So like, there's also restrictions that way as well about it. But yeah, like there's lots of cost to an athlete, and just considering what are you getting for your money, because most people have to consider that when they're doing this sport. There's very few that I've ever met that are like, yeah, I don't really care about the money. Yeah, I'm just doing it. I'm not worried about it.
But what about, so let's switch gears though. What about as a promoter? Now, I mean, you're talking like a lot of people have some. I mean, there's some hate now over OSG, and right, and there's a lot that goes into that. For starters, like it costs money on both ends, I guess. We don't need to talk about OSG necessarily, but as a promoter, I mean, you're doing shows for PSL. There's a cost associated on your end just to be able to put on a show that has the quality, it meets standards. I mean, let's talk about that. Let's just talk about the cost associated for you to put on a show that, you're not going to please everybody. The goal is to, hopefully, I think your risk of not pleasing everybody is reduced drastically with the more class-centered, class-oriented shows. But let's talk about the costs associated as a promoter.
Running a show, man, the cost, there's obviously different levels of cost to different things, but the first cost every promoter considers is the venue, right? Is the venue the gym that I own? Or is the venue building a stage on the beach at the sand? Or is the venue a coliseum, right? And it varies wildly. And I do think that you're smart, if you can help it, not to spend a ton of money on a venue that offers you no return. If you spend money on a really nice, like, concert venue or something that you can then sell spots to that you can make your money back, cool. But if you're just dropping a couple grand or something to just have a venue, it's like there's a reason people say throwing shows doesn't make money. It's like decisions like that, but it's like your venue can cost anywhere from nothing to just like the light. I just filled these out too. I should actually know the answer to this, but like the papers that say, hey, I'm applying permits. There you go. Permitting to do certain things. Like, for example, I can just say the permitting to do our show in Virginia Beach, it matters how many days it is. And that days includes setting up and breaking down too. It's not just the days the shows happen. It's the days that you're on the sand or the days that you're in the thing. And then there's also permits for things people don't realize. Like, it's permits for like cameras, because we're filming Virginia Beach and we're using Virginia Beach to do whatever we want. We actually have to have those cameras permitted and the licenses to do it, which is something I learned, right? Most people don't know that, but I think for every camera we had, it was like $75. Well, guess what? We have a few cameras. So that cost adds up kind of quickly. But like permits, right? Just any kind of permitting is the next thing. And that also, we brought in a food truck and food vendors. So that's also additional fees that run.
You have to pay like a minimum to food trucks, right? Like they want to guarantee that they're going to make a certain amount of money.
Yeah, it depends. Like I've had all sorts of dealings with them over the years. It's like some of them just want a dollar amount to, like, they just want like a guarantee there's enough people, right? Like, so Virginia Beach on the boardwalk, there's 2,000 people an hour that walk by. You don't have to convince any of them that they're not going to get their money back, right?
Okay.
So it just depends on your crowd, is usually my experience with them. And then the next thing is like, all right, there's some hard costs with a show that you can't avoid. You can't avoid buying shirts. I prefer to pay for good shirts. Dan, we were just talking about the shirt you're wearing is nice. I prefer that, just really from a human standpoint of like, hey, you like the shirt, right? Like if you wear it, cool, that's awesome, but I want you to like it. Compete in it, wear it later, all that stuff. You probably would get lynched if you did not have trophies of some sort at a contest. Like you gotta have something, right? And I don't know what everyone pays for their shirts. I know that because the PSL shows that I have the most experience with, like, they're not hundreds of people. So my shirt cost isn't necessarily huge like an Arnold or a Nationals or anything like that would be, because I'm not having to buy 500 to 1,000 shirts, because you got your athletes, you got your volunteers, you got to give your mom a shirt, and then your
Right.
sponsors a shirt. And
But
then also,
contrarily though, you also don't have competitor entry fees to pay for those shirts either.
yeah, nope, not at all. I've ran plenty of shows that had entry fees like early on promoting, and how I did that, I was like, well, I know that the shirts from this place cost $13 each, and I know that I'm gonna have to spend like $500 to get a gazillion trophies for all the classes. And I was like, well, if I have that, I have 100 people. That's $5 a person that I'm spending.
Right.
And I
Right.
just kind of factored it in. I'm like, cool, my cost per person is going to be like $47. So if I charge, you know, $75 after taxes, insurance, all of that, then I'll at least not lose money. That's how I structured my stuff. And 47 is just a random number. And that's basically where if it was 47, I'd probably charge like 75.
Sure.
But yeah, I mean, I don't, I'd say what I do is going to be different than most people, because I don't think for what I'm doing, the athletes at the top level should have to pay to come do it. That's purely my choice. I do not judge anyone who charges, right? Like at all.
Right.
There's a lot of things I don't have to pay for. We'll put it this way: like, you're not going to catch me running a 2 weight class show in a full on like 8,000 person civic center. Not
Right.
going to happen.
Doesn't make sense.
Yeah, because the finances just don't add up. One day maybe they will. That's awesome. But
I mean,
ain't
unless you get the civic center for free.
sure, yeah. Well, I actually have a decent amount of dealings with that, just from knowing people that run civic centers and talking. There's an arena here where I live in Baltimore. It's called the Royal Farms Arena. You can look it up. Big deal. Like Jelly Roll was there. I think it was Jelly Roll, I think, was there one of the years I ran a show here. And I'm like,
Nice.
of course no one knows what Strongman is next to Jelly Roll 2 blocks down the street. But I know the guy who run like part of their like fulfillment department, if you will. And it's like, I could this is a fun thing. I can get that venue for free. I have to guarantee 2,500 tickets at general admission price to be sold to get that venue for free. And every ticket that isn't sold, I'm responsible. I think it was like $40.
Ouch. We didn't.
Weird.
I think we're losing you, Tyler.
Oh,
He's frozen.
Frozen.
oh.
Uh-oh. Tyler, we miss you. Come back to us.
He's gone.
He's gone. All right.
No.
Well,
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Potato quality, but you're here.
quality. Yeah, you're kind of freezing up a bit.
Yeah, crap. It just started out of nowhere. Can you guys hear me now?
Yeah,
we
we can hear you.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't
You
know
look
where
good.
I cut out at.
We were talking. You were talking
Civic
about
Center tickets.
tickets, and you would be
Yeah,
responsible
like
for
the Royal
$40
Farms
to get it.
Arena, yeah. Yeah, cool. You heard all that, yeah. And
Yep.
that's one piece to the whole puzzle. Because also, if I were to get that arena and say I sold the 2,500, right, that's break even. And there's no thing if you sell more, but let's be realistic. Strongman right now, we're not selling 2,500 tickets anywhere that we go. But then the other cost that is like forgotten about is the loading, like transportation to there, like all the equipment. I mean, we take 25,000 pounds worth of stuff probably everywhere we go. A lot of places will not let you unload that yourself, right? So you got to pay them to unload
Really?
it.
No
Yeah.
kidding.
Some places will, some places will not. You have to unload it. Then, depending on your event size, there's security needs, there's other staffing needs, and then there's usually there's some costs in there that like aren't on the surface, right? So if I was going to do a show there, I can speak specifically to that place. If I was going to do a show there, I have to employ at minimum, and I'm in Baltimore, so keep that in mind. But I have to
Right.
employ at minimum 6 security guards for 2 hours before the show and 2 hours after and everything in between. And I have
What's
to
minimum?
employ.
What's the wage? What do you have to employ, man?
I forget, man. It was like $20 an hour per person or something like that. Like,
So, yeah.
it adds
Not
up.
cheap. Not cheap. Sure.
Yeah, and then like you had to have one security guard during your like load in and breakdown times, and that's just however long it takes. So that adds up really fast, and that's just my numbers, right?
Sure.
And if you need like, let's say, hey, like I need to cordon off that area over there because of insurance, you're usually not allowed to bring your own stuff in. So now all of a sudden they're hitting you with rental fees, right? Like rental fees for crowd control. Sometimes it comes with it, and sometimes it doesn't. So you get to rent all the stuff. So there's a whole lot of other goofy costs that you don't think about, and usually
so
people
costs
don't
like that athletes definitely don't think about, because I've never, man, I competed for 16 years and I had no idea that you may have to pay for fucking rental costs to cord off
some
space.
places will.
That's
And if you and if you dig into it, you understand, because if I bring my stuff in here and do it and somebody gets hurt, now it's an insurance problem that they're definitely not going to deal with.
Yeah, well,
Right?
they're going to dump the liability on you, probably.
Right. Yeah, like, so just nobody wants to deal with it.
Right.
The security is one that I've ran into. And then like because like the internet and the lights and all that's all factored into like whatever your cost is. But the cost is usually the big one, right? Because if I just reverse engineered and I didn't sell a single ticket, the cost of the venue is whatever 2,500 times 40 is. 100 grand? I don't know. Like, yeah. Right. So there's the cost of the venue right there if I don't sell the tickets. So that's, you know what I mean?
Yeah, that's nuts.
It again, that's a specific example from here.
So that's a good reason not to go to that venue. Especially for cost wise. But what are like the real costs though? I mean, I don't need to get into like super specific and like sensitive information, but what are like kind of the real costs of putting on a show though? That's
outside of the venue. The next piece is equipment, like whether you have it all or not. If you have it all, you got to, and again, you're not doing it in your gym that you own or right outside. Is okay. What's my cost to transport equipment? Like for us to transport equipment, it's probably on the lower end just because of like what some people do to help us. But like you got trucks, gas, people, time. But we're actually, time is out of this conversation. That's a loss. Depending on where we're at, part of the reason why we structure our shows kind of mostly in one area is because we can transport the equipment from a centralized place to them. So it saves on cost. But it's probably a couple grand to get the equipment there. Not to set it up, not to break it down. Just to actually, last year at Virginia Beach was about $4,500 to get all the equipment there, and that was with Johnny being an absolute hero.
Yeah,
without Johnny, dude,
Johnny's always a hero.
Always, every time.
Yeah.
I make sure to tell people every time I can he's at a show. Like this show didn't happen without Johnny.
Yeah.
Just plain and simple. But the equipment, right? You got to buy it. That costs money. I strongly encourage people to avoid buying it at all costs if you can.
Right.
Unless you just need it or whatever, right? The next piece, like for stuff that like I do, is like, okay, well, I have judges that are pretty good judges. So it's like, are we paying for travel, lodging, food, judges fee? And we have Bobby, we had Greg, Nancy, we had Andrew come out and judge. People with like guest judge, like CJ is like guest judge, that popped off a commentary, but there's costs associated with that. Then the next piece is like if you have a live stream, that's this entire separate like line item on a budget. Is there's live stream companies out there. We're talking in this realm, not the rogue realm.
Right.
Costs you between we're gonna pretend no one does it for free, but like between $500 and like $5,000 a day, and that's just a fee for them to be there, right? So then it's like, okay, cool. We have probably the hotel for them, probably the travel for them, maybe some food for them, and then who knows what else? Everyone has their own like specific things.
Sure,
that adds up really fast. And then the commentary. So if you're going to spend the money on a live stream, you probably don't want to spend it to have an idiot doing it.
Sure.
Right? Plain and simple.
Right.
been through a lot of them. I've had great experiences and not so great ones. But we'll just CJ and Jen, like you got to get them there, right? Like they're not doing it for free. They're not losing a pen out of their pocket. So that winds up, that's a part of the live stream like bill. Internet. Some places have really good internet with really good upload speed. Some places do not. So we actually have our own internet that we take to places that we don't know, like the beach. There's no internet connection on the beach. So we have our own.
Do you use like Starlink or something? Or
no, Starlink is actually not that reliable. Well, sorry, where we're at, not that reliable. Takes like 3 months to get like set up and everything, but it's not that reliable, and it's crazy expensive.
Yeah, because I know it's a bit on the expensive side, but
yeah, especially if you're a business. Yeah, but I found actually through and I'm going to credit Nick Romero out in LA. It was like south of LA, but we just ran the U80 show out there, and the venue had internet, worked fine, all that stuff. Then it didn't. We're talking like Friday night at 5 p.m. Show starts Saturday at noon, right? No internet. So we figured this out. I was like, we're in LA. We can figure this out, right? Again, location. But we went to T-Mobile and got their like mobile internet. It's like $120 a month, and it is rock solid.
Nice.
So I have a business one that I just keep because it's more expensive to turn it back in, cancel it, and restart it than just to keep it.
Interesting.
And you got to make sure it works in your area. It's like $120 a month, and it works great. It's like
nice
100 plus upload, which you need like 15, so it's overkill for it.
Sure.
But internet cost is a thing, because the last thing you want to do is pay all this money for a live streaming commentators and internet crash.
Yeah,
that's no
exactly fun. We've seen that happen like so many times. Like, I mean, so many shows.
Yeah, man. I've watched shows like that. I've been a part of them, and I've had shows where our internet like went in and out. I will definitely thank Don Souza for nailing into my head that the internet cannot fail no matter what. Yeah. So thankfully, that's usually top in my head of the internet cannot fail, and I always have redundancy. So wherever I'm at, use their internet, also have mine.
Sure.
And if like Virginia Beach issue, we have two. So if one decides to be stupid, we have internet still, because there is no backup. You can plug it in and say,
yeah. Right.
So all of that, and then the other thing with the live stream, you don't want to. And I've had this happen with like the mail screwing me over, but it's like you pay all this for a live stream, right? Let's just call the live stream total cost on a good day like $5,000 between the live stream, the commentators, their deals, all that. Let's call it $5,000. Well, you need the show to look pretty good, right? You got to have branding, whether it be like some vinyl banners, whether it be like pipe and drape, whether it be like the tension fabric, and then again, inside and outside kind of dictate this sometimes. All of that's not the cheapest stuff in the world, right? Like if you guys ever see like a vinyl banner, like 3 feet long by like 2 feet high or something, like every one of those you can probably bet costs at least $60. I don't really know a lot about pipe and drape because I've only ever rented it. I do outside shows. Pipe and drape is not a good fit almost ever. The tension fabric stuff that you guys have seen, like we're moving slightly away from it, but I can tell you the stands were probably like $150 to $200 a piece, and then the banners they're like 7.5 feet by like 10 feet, and then there's 7.5 by like 20 feet long. You can tell it's obvious which one's which. The fabric is like $250 to $300 per on the 10, and then the fabric on the 20 is like $550 each. So one like 7.5 by like 20 is like $800. The other one's
that's so much cheaper. That when I did the Feats of Strength out here, man, I couldn't find a banner for under like $1,500 to save my life. And I just wanted something that was like 10 by 10 or something like that. Yeah. Dude, it was absolutely bonkers.
Yeah. So I will say, without a doubt, it's called fabricsignguys.com. Great deal. Do it quickly.
Yeah.
Never had a problem. The one time I had a problem, actually, never had a problem. That's funny. Wasn't their fault. Is ordered it on time. Virginia Beach last year or this past year. The UPS, FedEx, whatever screwed up. Didn't get there in time, and I was beside myself about it. Because it's like they're all kind of one use, so it's like, well, that was a lot of money for nothing. And
Yeah,
then
that
the
sucks.
vinyl like ring grommet signs that you got to have something to hang on to. I always use Hossware. People don't necessarily know that they make them. I always use them. I'm like, hey,
Interesting.
like I need this, and I'm already getting my shirts, so it just makes sense. The least
Right.
places you have to deal with. Those
Yeah.
guys are great. Never failed me. Every single commentary backdrop that PSL has ever used has come from Hossware.
Nice.
Every time, right? They can make effectively any reasonable size you would want. Great guys, great to deal with, whole 9 yards. So the branding of things, you can probably, especially if you're first doing it, you can count on thousands of dollars. Once you have the stands, you can count on less. And then recently, what's been happening, because we've been planning this for like a year or whatever, like other companies too, is there's these things called LED screens that are becoming popular. And most everyone is going to wind up in sticker shock when they realize what renting or buying those looks like. We have one that should be here like this week. It's 10 feet tall by 14 feet long. That's pretty big. Of the
Nice.
three that we can count on that aren't the top level, I've seen Strongman Corp has a really nice one, and OSG had a really nice one. That's the smallest one, right? I don't know the sizes necessarily. I just spent so much time I can see, right? And you're not. I guess you could like buy one from China or something and get it cheaper. You're not gonna find a
Take
good
take
one.
3 months to get here.
Hey, look, if you do it enough time, you can wait. But you're probably looking at 10 grand on the low end to buy one. And one that's bigger just, costs more. And then there's all the other equipment that goes with it that costs more.
Right.
They're nasty expensive. World's Strongest Man uses them as well on the beach. Like they're just the low walls all around it. That's all an LED wall. And
Okay.
I'm under the impression that they rent them, but that's like a very rare thing. But again, that's going to just skyrocket your price. To rent one the size I'm getting, which we purchased it to rent one, I want to say it's like if you want to get it for your contest for a day, I want to say you can spend about $700 to $1,000 to rent it. All the stuff with it, all that. Not for anyone to run it, just to rent it.
Wow.
Yeah. So like you said, that's like the other layer of branding that we're seeing kind of creep into the sport, which I think is cool. Again, Strongman Corp's got a really nice one. OSG, they had one there. It was really nice as well. I'm under the impression that was rented. I'm not sure though. That's the branding, but we'll take that out. Again, first time investment in branding, Darren, like you said, it's going to be expensive.
Sure.
Then you can just buy the things and replace them, right? Whether it be the pipe and drape replacements, whether it be the vinyl replacements, those are cheap. But again, if you do everything in vinyl, it looks like you did everything in vinyl, right? Like
Sure.
there's a
Yeah.
look associated. And I just factor in branding. This is specifically PSL. I factor in branding at about $1,200 a show at this point because we have all of the stands and stuff like that.
Right.
And I have an extremely good relationship with the company that Fabric Sign guys. I don't get anything for telling y'all to go to them. That's beside the point. But I have a really good relationship with them, and they're 2 hours up the road from me.
Nice.
So it's a very interesting deal. Because I don't have to pay to ship the stuff. Just drop it there and get it real quick.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And then insurance. I believe the federations offer and or require their insurance to be used for like just a show to happen. Like
Yep.
that stuff. That's always a thing everywhere. People don't realize when you go to a venue that's not yours, you have to have your own insurance, and they have to insure that venue and that locale, that everything.
Right. Right.
Did do a show in Baltimore. I've got the whatever they're called at the bottom, like also insured, like 7 different companies because they're all around there. So it's crazy. Each one of those companies just adds up. And then the different stuff. So insurance, you always got to consider is a couple $100. I mean, it's nothing nuts. I believe Willie gives out a pretty good deal for his people. I'm just not sure what Strongman Corp does.
Yeah, I think Strongman Corp used to be like $100, something like that. You pay.
Yeah. It's like you said, it's probably gone up then, but yeah.
It maybe has. Yeah, it's been a minute since I've done one of their shows, or put on a show for.
Yeah, and maybe it is. I just think cost just always goes up.
Yeah, it does. I mean, it does.
Yeah, not that anyone's money hungry. It's just, hey, stuff's more expensive. I'm sure they have an insurance company that they get the premium from, and their insurance company pays the rate. Is what I mean. And then there's other like it's always random. Everyone that's run a show understands this. So at some point you need like tape. Like, ah, crap, where's the tape? Oh, we gotta buy that. Where's the little walkie wheel to measure, right? Whatever, all of that stuff. Where's the bleach? do we have enough collars? Like all those random little things that most people, if you haven't done it before, you realize right in the moment that you need the thing, and you're like, oh crap, I don't have that. And then you have volunteers, right? If you want to be decent to them, you will provide them something to eat and drink. You don't have to like buy them a 5-course meal, but like some bottles of water, Gatorade, boxes of chips, boxes of like, I don't know, man, just stuff, right? Decent stuff. What it adds up when you got 15 volunteers, you do that for 15 people. It's okay, that's another couple $100, which again, they're coming to volunteer their time. So the least you could do is do something for them, right? And that's like the minimum right there. And
what does all that add up to, though?
yeah,
So, I mean, you throw in a lot of numbers.
right.
What is your average show cost?
Yeah, it's funny. Actually, I just did the average for 2024. Like, whatever we were actually texting about this is roughly when I was doing it. And it's all considered, right? Every show, everything, just the average show to put on in 2024 for us, to give a round number without the prize money. All right. So without the prize money at all was about $7,800.
Wow.
And I've put on a ton of shows. I've done this a long time. I have some really good relationships. And yeah. And I promise none of that is like the things that seem to irk people. Like no one's looked at my shows and said, wow, Tyler, you really spent too much money on that thing that didn't do anything. Maybe they have, and I have heard it. But like I've yet to like spend money on something that doesn't seem necessary for what I'm doing, right? And it's that's without the prize money. So
you don't get any entry fees or anything from your athletes. What is that something that you want to advertise or talk about as like what average prize money is, or is that something you just want to keep like show to show? Because I know that you don't make like you don't typically advertise the prize money, right? Like other shows do.
Well, that's my fault. You're right. I haven't. Okay. I think that's my fault. Luke Davies actually put it really good. Like Tyler's an idiot for not talking about it. He's right.
I guess I thought there was some like underlying reason, just that because prize money doesn't necessarily Well, go ahead, because I don't want to make any assumptions.
No, you're good.
I mean, what I did, I kind of had like an idea in my head for why you didn't like talk about prize money.
The main reason that it hasn't made it out there much is simply because I've always been let my work do the talking. I don't want to talk about it. If I do a good enough job, people will notice. Right. And because I have chosen to do this, I have to understand that that's not how this is going to grow the fastest. Right. 100% on me. People have told me plenty. You need to talk about this. I'm like, people know. No, they don't. So that's the main reason. The second reason is I prize money matters, right? Of course. But I want people to come to PSL because of what it is. Right. First and foremost, right? Their experience, how they're going to feel, how they're treated, all that. That's what I want you to come for. Because at the end of the day, not everyone's winning prize money. So you got to have a great time. And then I do always I send out I think it's pretty well put together PDF, like before the shows to all the athletes. Some read it, some Grace clearly don't. Love you, mean it. But it's like,
was that when you said Grace? Was that Grace? Your color?
Yeah, absolutely, okay. Colorado. Love you, mean it.
Okay.
It's plain as day. Some people don't read it.
Grace, you're getting called out.
I'm gonna message you right after the head to the podcast, and I called you out. Wait for it. But it has
read
all
your
that
correspondence. Damn it.
Well, yeah, it's like it has all that in there. It has like exactly what places are paid and the time frame it's going to take and how you earn it, right? Because there's the prize money for like first, second, third, and then there's also the prize money for like winning an event, right? Last year was $150 per event win. This year it's going to be at least that. It might not be anymore, but it'll be at least that. And so all of our shows are 6 events. Save the 105 guys, they're 10. That is the only discrepancy in that. They just have the option to win 4 more events. But otherwise, all the prize money is the same throughout our like major championship shows. But yeah, no, athletes don't pay an entry fee. There's no federation fee. There's none of that, and that's fine. I don't have a problem with any of that. It's not the game I'm choosing to play. That's what I tell people. The obvious question is, well, how do you pay the prize money? Right? And that simply is sponsors for the vast majority of it. And then there's a couple of things, like something I could also encourage people to like work on, like, we do sell shirts, and yes, the money goes back to the athletes in the form of prize money.
Nice. Yeah.
We sell different merchandise like hoodies and banners, all that. And then usually when like at Virginia Beach, if a vendor or someone's coming and selling things, usually what it winds up being, or like at the Strong Fest in Roanoke, it winds up being like hey, call it 10% just for the sake of this conversation. Like, you come do this, 10% of what your gross is, you give to us, and that's it. Right. And then everybody wins because they're not paying $1,000 or $2,000 for a space that they might not even make that on.
Right.
So it's win both ways. And our live streams are currently free. So it's like I said, it's primarily sponsors and support in that manner.
Right. I like that the live streams are free. We had talked back in the day about charging for live streams, and I'm like so passionate about this. Like, until Strongman can sell, you can sell out seats or viewership. Like, I feel like you got to give it away, man. You gotta give something away before you can make money, right? You've got to get the audience in there and get them engaged and make it accessible, and until there is like enough demand to justify paying. Because if you charge people just to charge when there isn't any demand, you're actually shooting yourself in the foot, and you're actually scaring people away from coming to.
Most definitely, man.
Right?
I have had some very honest conversations with promoters who have done live streams and charged for them.
Yeah.
Self included. And
it's a big barrier, right? It's a barrier that you shouldn't be imposing.
Not at this point for almost everything, right? Like, if I could sell live streams and pay $100,000 because I sold that many live streams, absolutely. Everyone's paying $20 to watch it. Right.
But you got to have you have to have 50,000 viewers or 20,000 viewers or whatever it is, right?
Right. We're not doing that. It's plain and simple.
Yeah. I mean, you see small shows. I remember Southwest Regionals for OSG, their live stream happened to have a view count in the corner of it, and there was 59 of us watching for a good portion while I was watching the show. And you're like, if that was a charged live show and everything, like, that's actually not that much money. And I'm pretty sure as a sponsor, hopefully there's a huge crowd there, because that's not bringing really eyes to the show or anything like
yeah, absolutely.
It's not. Yeah, when you only have 59 people and you charge them, I mean, even though you can justify it and say, well, it's only $2 or $3, and it's like, yeah, but you made $550 off of that. Wasn't even worth the $3,000 that you spent on it.
Yeah,
because somewhere it's like $360 or something, and it's like, realistically, you need to like get eyes on it. And I realized I actually kind of have to leave a little bit early, but I was gonna say two things. Yeah, I'm sorry, and everything. Usually I would be the one going too long. But what I was gonna say, it's interesting when you break down your costs, like not including payouts and stuff. It's interesting how many like smaller local shows will still spend too much money before they have like the attention there and stuff. Like, I've been surprised when you see like small shows renting out venues that, even if it's like $2,500, $5,000, you realize that's the first 50 competitors paying $100 or whatever, like, that's all the money and stuff right there. And it's like, it's interesting to see how much that stuff kind of like adds up. So it's interesting when you break it down in a very realistic thing of like, some of your earlier shows were at like small places that were free or more affordable or whatever, in favor of getting like prize money and stuff, rather than like some of these things where it's like, this is the world's biggest show or whatever, or like, we want it to be the biggest show in our state, so we're going to spend $5,000 on a venue, $3,000 on a live stream. That's already, hopefully you have 80 competitors paying $100 each, or good sponsors, because like, it's crazy.
Yeah.
Power to the ambition. Power to the ambition.
Yeah. But it's also not sustainable sometimes, though, with those things, like, especially local shows.
It's not. And I think I want to finish the show with you here, John, if you can stay a minute.
Yeah, I can't.
But to kind of like wrap up, like there's a big economic picture that I think a lot of athletes don't really grasp, and I think it really drives some of the frustration and whatnot. Is and I think there's promoters too that need to be a little bit more cognizant of how they set shows up and how it affects the athletes. But I mean, one, promoting a show is not cheap. There's a lot of costs, and the bigger the production, the more it costs. And kind of talking about athlete fees going up at certain shows and coaching fees being introduced. Well, we talked about convention centers and ticket costs. If you don't fill them, you have to figure out how to pay that, like potentially $100,000. Where's that money coming from? And so it's sort of this unfortunate balancing act, I'm sure, of having to come up with ways to balance the books right at the end of the show. And unfortunately, there's a big cost to it. But I think also, one thing that I want to say from an athlete's perspective is when people start to complain about these costs rising and everything, like the economic reality is that there's a two-way street, right? It's not promoter greed. Certainly not. I mean, even if we want to say it's greed, which I don't think it is, but if we want to say it's greed, it's a two-way street, right? It's also greedy consumers paying that price and enabling that so-called greed, right? You're saying you're voting with your dollar and saying, hey, this price is actually okay, right? Yeah. And if you're agreeing to the terms when you make that payment, right? Nobody's forcing you to go to that show. Nobody's forcing you to travel. Nobody's forcing you to pay it, right? You're doing that willfully, right? This is a two-way street. This is how economics work, right? Supply and demand. And as long as the demand stays there, somebody's going to supply it to you.
Yeah.
And if you don't like those prices, like you stop paying for it, right? But as long as I'm serious, I'm dead serious. Like if you don't like the prices, stop paying for it. That's it. You vote with your dollar. And that's how like the whole economy works. That's how a free market economy works, right? Demand is going to be met by supply, right? Demand goes down, prices follow. Like that's how it works. But yeah, we got to be cognizant that there's a lot of time, a lot of effort, a lot of money and resources that go into putting on those big shows. And if you want that big athlete experience, that's sort of the reality that you're going to face. But again, yeah, it's expensive being an athlete in strongman in a sport that there's really not an ROI directly from competition. It's you pay to play, and as long as people are willing to pay, prices are going to continue to rise until the market says enough is enough.
Yeah, and I think in some ways I've seen it happen here in Texas for a while. There was like a span of people like buying big, goofy pieces of equipment for shows specifically that like you're spending $5,000 on a thing that will be used once, maybe. Like, and sometimes breaks in the middle of it and everything. And you're like, there's this, like, so it's interesting when people talk about that because I think at least, so I am wildly out of touch with things these days from not being on the internet and stuff. But I still remember like people can see how much those things cost. If I know promoters, I've seen promoters talk about like having Bill Kazmaier there. That costs you $6,000 and stuff. Like it's insane. You're like,
is he actually that cheap? I would expect him.
Yeah, no,
$10,000 flat rate.
It was something like $6,000 a day or something like that. But that's even like. But athletes and stuff can see that kind of thing. It's like if you didn't spend money on the athlete experience, but it looks like you spent $20,000 on new equipment, like it's interesting because it shows where the priorities are. Like I think there's something about, and I think it's helpful a lot of times, like with PSL shows and stuff, of like putting the money into efficient things rather than, because you do see promoters, I've seen them in Texas complain about things, and it's like, you paid for a venue that was too expensive, possibly. You shouldn't have bought that equipment. You shouldn't be you shouldn't pay thousands of dollars for anything that's one-time use, like unless it's maybe one banner or something. But like, I've seen people pay $12,000 for pieces of equipment that I know aren't being used for anything else. Like,
bonkers, man.
Which, like the huge Ukrainian deadlift platform they had at, what was it, like Australia's? There was some show out there
Yeah,
that
it
was
was
like
somewhere
this
in Australia.
huge thing, and you're
It
like,
was like it was a
that's
whole like tower of power, man.
yeah. And I mean, even
And
sometimes
the athlete was like this little speck
Right.
on the top.
That's the
yeah.
thing. It was like, stop trying to be Rogue and Shaw. No, stop trying to be that. Like,
Hmm.
that's a different level of money.
Yeah.
And
And that's what people have to realize is part of why Shaw can do those things is because he has a huge audience and his platform was free to get into like
yeah,
that and stuff. Like most of us, like a lot of us got into strength sports seeing those like YouTubers like Shaw Strength and stuff. Like that's an easy access point. Whereas like sometimes it's painful when you see shows that are, for one, a pay-per-view show, even if it's $6 or $7, realistically you could have got that through a shirt sale or something, because a lot of times if you can get a shirt for like $13 or something, sell it for 25 or more, like yeah, even more, like there's ways you can actually like get money to the athletes and stuff. And I think sometimes it can be, it gets into like murky waters when like for a while there was this trend, at least in Texas, of like spending too much to try to be the next Rogue or whatever, rather than like make it a good experience for the athletes. Because like Darren was saying, there is that experience of like try kind of treating it like it's like you have to lower your standards because it's strongman, like, which is why the whole show started, was that like, well, like it's strongman, so like now, especially too, of like Darren, like you talk about shows being like OSG 300 some dollars for $400 a ticket, like those things add up and everything. And hopefully, I think OSG delivers a great experience to people and everything. But I've seen like small local shows that for $100 you're not getting what like you necessarily paid for,
yeah,
in a way that's like
that's a
it's
big
a whole
can of
thing.
worms.
You get
That's
a
a
shirt
Yeah.
and
whole
$12
like
a day.
yeah. Yeah, that's a whole like
Yeah.
that's a whole can of worms, man.
Yeah.
We've been down that rabbit hole a few times.
That's true, but yeah, but I was saying for like the economics, like I think people, athletes would be less upset if they don't see you spending money on goofy things and stuff. And I think a
100%.
lot of times like there is that like, at least like if there is prize money and stuff like that, at least like money, like I think like the whole point should be athlete centric, which is, I think you do really well with that with PSL and stuff. It's like it's about the athlete experience rather than this concept of like it's the athlete who's your customer. That's who you're
Right.
making money off of. Like if you can charge them hundreds of dollars for entry, charge them for grip shirts, charge them for every aspect of things, you're like, it's not necessarily the best practice in my mind to like make the people who are supposed to be the stars of the show financially paying for the whole show.
Yeah. Oh, no. I've paid for shows to go to that I was nothing but happy and never once regretted. One of them was actually even the Nationals. Like, cool, big cost, had a great time. Did not do well, but had a great time. Never thought so. It's like just the experience that people put into it. It
Absolutely.
matters a lot, I think.
Yeah, man. So, I mean, we talked about a lot. And I know, some people want to hear solutions. We didn't quite get to that, but I think PSL is a great solution. I mean, in the big scheme of things, I know you're doing your thing. That's what you're doing. At OSG's got their own thing, and
Yeah.
they're doing what the demand uh is calling for, right? And you can't do a big show. I don't think you can do a big show like 400 athletes without charging for
Gotcha.
um,
Gotcha.
fees. You just have to, right? So I personally, I think the real future of strongman should be the PSL chaos type venue or format, right? Smaller, class oriented shows.
I think
I think
America's Strongest Man does it too. Do pretty
yeah,
well.
exactly. I mean, there's a few good examples. You're right. That do that very well, and I personally think that from an athlete experience perspective, that's the best. Is those smaller, intimate shows, and I mean, like you said, I mean, you have the ability to be more efficient without you spend your money and be selective in creating this very specific athlete experience where those big shows just it's not going to happen. But there's a demand for those big shows still, and they're going to continue. So
it's just a different kind of, it's a different beast, you know. Like
it's just different beast.
Else, yeah, nowhere else brings people together like OSG from all over the world.
100%. But at the end of the day, there are options, right? There's not just one show. There's not one just big show. There's not just one world championship. There's 3 or 4 around the world, even for weight class athletes, maybe 5 even.
That's what's the world championship, but that's a whole nother topic.
Whole other topic, yeah. But still, I mean, there's a lot of options out there to compete. You're not pigeonholed, and I think athletes need to decide on what's most important to them and spend their money accordingly. But dude, it's been awesome getting the old troop back together. I dig it, man. I hope we can do this again soon. Thanks for coming on, Tyler. Any closing words?
Dude, I mean, I think like you said, we covered a lot. It was awesome getting with you guys again. Just it feels like some old times. It was amazing. And yeah, man, like there's just like I said, Pete, like as we talk more and more about money and strongman and stuff, like just thinking about not only how much you're spending and where, but what it's pushing, right? Like if you like somebody goes, spend your money on it. That's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But you said it best. You're agreeing to the terms. You don't get to spend your money and then go complain about getting exactly what you get. Just like if you come to PSL, you know the terms. Whatever those terms are, like, that's what you're getting what you get. And I do think that there's room for constructive feedback from the people consuming the product, being athletes in a show. But I think it's something that the sport and people in it should be more and more mindful of, is like you said, the economics of it on both sides. Because it's not fair to just be like, oh, yeah, athletes should never pay anything and promoters should just pay for everything all the time. Right. That's also not fair.
Easier said than done.
You're not lying about that, man.
All right, guys. Good to see you again, John. We'll be talking, brother.
Yeah, we'll keep in touch. I'm glad to see people. I'll still be offline for a good while, probably. But I definitely great dropping in.
All right, guys. Peace.
See you guys.
Yeah.
We hope you enjoyed this episode, and don't forget to like, subscribe, share, and follow us on Instagram for updates. We'll catch you next time on World's Strongest Opinions.